Aloha and welcome to today's program on little fire ants, LFA. Technically, we should use the word little to differentiate from other kinds of fire ants. But here on the Big Island, for all intents and purposes, we just say fire ants. You know, it's a tiny ant, but a huge problem. The Global Invasive Species Database, which includes plants, animals, fish, fungus, and other species, in addition to insects, lists the little fire ant as one of the 100 worst invasive species on the planet. And they're here. They were first reported in Pune in 1999, and they're pretty well established here on the Big Island and have the potential to spread to other islands as well. So on today's program, we're going to cover prevention of the spread of little fire ants. I know a lot of you who already have fire ants on your property are more interested in treatment and control, but that can be pretty complicated, so we're going to cover that in another program. Today what we're going to do is show you how to survey for little fire ants and a simple and easy method to quarantine a single potted plant before bringing it onto your property. And I know if you don't have fire ants on your property, it's easy to be real complacent and say, you know, I don't want to go through all that hassle and monitor for ants, blah, blah, blah. But I tell you, in the long run, it'll save you a lot of time, effort, money, and grief if you are diligent about preventing the spread of little fire ants to your property right now. There's a long list of reasons why you don't want to have fire ants on your property, and here's my top 5. Reason number 5, they sting. And it's not your common garden variety insect sting. It's kind of an over-the-top, burning, itching, irritating red welt that can last a long time. And that's from only one ant. Okay, reason number 4, if you want to suck it up and say, I don't care if I get stung by little ants, consider this. Little fire ants will sting your pets in the eyes, and some pets have even gone blind from fire ant stings. And if you care about the welfare of your pet as I do, that's a huge issue. And little fire ants can also have a negative impact on birds, bees, and other insects that you might like to have on your property. Okay, reason number 3 that you don't want fire ants on your property. They live in trees as well as in the ground and in your house. Take a listen.
The little fire ants don't excavate their nests. They're actually having multiple colonies that can be anywhere from under a rock to behind a chunk of moss to in a palm frond. So with this, it becomes a three-dimensional problem.
Arboreal. They live in trees. 3-dimensional. They live over there, over there, over there, over there, and over there.
The ants are living everywhere. Like you heard from Heather earlier, they don't build mounds. You're not going to be able to go around and say, that's a nest, and that's a nest. You're going to look around your yard, you're going to see moss on your trees. Well, that's going to be a nest. You're going to see leaf litter on the ground, and that's going to be a bunch of nests. An epiphyte in the trees, and that's a nest. You see a banana tree. Each one of those banana trees is a nest, or multiple nests.
Okay, reason number 2 why you don't want to have little fire ants on your property, and this is a big one. Treatment and control can drag on into the foreseeable future, eating up lots of your time, energy, money, and other resources, because they're so pervasive that once you get little fire ants, you may be able to contain them, but there's a good chance you may never get rid of them entirely.
Little fire ants, per acre, there's about 80 million of them. And as many as 228,000 of those are going to be queens. So that means that you're going to have about 45 queens per square yard. On an average house lot, say 10,000 square feet, that's about 50,000 queens. Each queen has the capability of laying an average of seven eggs per day. If you're going to lay those end to end, that's going to reach from Bayfront to Curtistown. So it's no wonder that it's really hard to control these ants.
So even if you kill all the ones you see, you might not make a dent in the population because the queens will only produce more as fast as you can kill them. So treatment and control involves a fairly complex strategy implemented over time.
So what a lot of people think of when they say, I have ants, no matter what kind they are, they go to the store, they grab a can of Raid or some kind of a spray pesticide, and they kill the ants as they see them. Well, with little fire ants, the ones that you see are only about 10 to 14% of the colony. The rest of the colony is hunkered back and not necessarily going to be impacted because the ants will die before any poison is carried back to them. So because of that, we're only spraying and having a temporary fix. And then we come back later and have to continue spraying, and it carries on. But once we understand their structure of their colonies, then we'll understand why baiting is going to be our best option.
Because if you have them, you want to get rid of them, but you don't want to get them again. You don't want to keep introducing them while you are treating, because you're just augmenting the problem, and you're going to constantly have to be treating because you're constantly reinfesting your property.
Like I say, it's complicated. You don't want to go there. It's way easier to prevent them from coming onto your property than to treat and control them later on. Just ask the people trying to control them right now. So that brings us to the number one reason why you want to stop fire ants from coming onto your property. And it's not a very sexy reason, but it's the socially responsive thing to do. It not only helps yourself, but it helps the greater good, because we all need to pitch in to protect our Aina from invasive species.
The price of having a pest-free Hawaii, regardless of what this pest is vigilance and actually putting the effort in. It's not just going to go away. You can't just ignore it away or wish it away. There's no secret in this. You actually have to put in effort, and that's the first hurdle to pass. Really, a lot of people will get all this information and know and feel very empowered that they can go and do something, but then they just don't do it and wonder why it didn't work. Well, you got to actually take that knowledge and use it. You can't know how to fish and then stand in front of the ocean wondering why you don't have fish in your bucket. You actually have to do the fishing.
That's the spirit. So let's go survey for fire ants. Okay, here's a simple method of surveying your property for little fire ants. What you need is wooden chopsticks, peanut butter. Some people say Skippy brand works better than organic peanut butter. I'm not sure of that, but maybe it's because they added sugar and vegetable oil. But I'm using it because it spreads easier and it's cheaper than the organic kind I use for myself. You'll also need some Ziploc bags. And what you do is separate the chopstick and break it in half, which is kind of a manageable size to fit into the Ziploc bag. You can use any kind of stick, so I'm going to use some of these wooden spoons I found in my kitchen junk drawer. What you do is spread peanut butter on about a third of the stick. Yeah, that is perfect. What you want is a thin layer. You don't want a big goopy mess like this, because what that does is it makes it harder to examine the ants if you should actually attract some of the ants to your peanut butter stick. So just a thin layer is fine. Okay. And what we're going to do is place these in parts of the yard where I want to see if there's little fire ants. And in about an hour, if the dog doesn't get it first, you go up and retrieve the sticks. And if there's ants on it, you place it into the Ziploc bag, put it in the freezer for 24 hours to kill the ants. And then you mail it into the Hawaii Ant Lab, and they'll examine the ants to make sure they are indeed little fire ants. Okay, so this is the peanut butter stick method of surveying an area for LFA or little fire ants. I got my buddy Jeff to help survey what we'll refer to as Property A. This neighborhood has had little fire ants for several years, and so there's a good chance we'll find some here. He's going to place the peanut butter sticks in shady, moist areas with lots of foliage, and that pretty much describes the whole property, which is why fire ants have become so well established in this area. If possible, the sticks can also be placed in nooks and crannies up in the tree branches as well. A banana patch is a good place where little fire ants like to hang their hats. So now we'll wait for about an hour before checking our fire ant lures. Okay, we're ready to pick up the lures to see what we got. And it looks like we got ants. Now, these look like LFA because they're tiny and they're all wearing orange uniforms. Knowing that each one of these ants packs a powerful and painful sting, imagine these all over your pet or crawling in your clothes. Not a good thing. Jeff's gonna place the bait sticks with the ants in a Ziploc bag and put it in the freezer for 24 hours. Then we'll send it to the ant lab for identification. Now you may be wondering why we need to send it to the ant lab when our survey clearly shows little ants all over the bait sticks. Well, let's go back to the workshop for the answer.
There is actually like a bunch of lookalikes in Hawaii, and
Or different red biting ants, right? Something, I read your website. So
yeah,
there's
yeah,
like
for
several
sure. I mean, we definitely recommend sending them in because to be 100% sure, you need a microscope to tell.
different- which is what-
As suspected, the ants we got from surveying Property A turned out to be fire ants. Look at how many frozen ants came off just 2 sticks. The priority for Property A should be treatment and control, in addition to making sure that no ants are exported to other properties. Now let's do a survey of another area that we'll call Property B. I believe this property is free of fire ants, but you can't be too sure. Before we go, let's find out a little more about surveying for fire ants.
Doing a survey isn't just, you have your property and you see fire ants at the corner of your house, so you put a stick at that corner of your house where you know you've seen fire ants. That's not a survey. The survey is really going to areas where you don't think you've seen the fire ants and putting the sticks out, because you might be surprised on what you find. If you know that they're there, you don't have to resurvey that spot. You want to go to other places to actually get a good idea of what the full extent, the reality of your situation is. Doing it through your whole property and in the grid fashion is ideal. If you can't do that, you can't do that. So you start with more priority areas.
We surveyed Property B and are happy to report that there were no fire ants found here, just a few black ants. So to report our results, the first survey of Property A showed lots of little fire ants there. Property A needs to start treatment to get rid of the ants or to just keep the problem under control. Meanwhile, the survey of Property B confirmed that it was free of fire ants. Now that doesn't mean we can just coast on Property B. It means we should be diligent about actively monitoring and protecting it from any potential invasion. Okay, I hope you don't mind the sound of my neighbor mowing the yard, but it's a hardworking agricultural community, and that's reality TV, I guess. I also hope you don't mind my mosquito-proof work clothes, but I'm gonna show you how to do a simple quarantine for one potted plant. If you're going to do quarantine for cinders, multiple plants, a lot of soil, mulch, or aggregate, you probably should set aside a bigger area and use a pesticide barrier to keep the ants in the quarantine area for the quarantine period. But today I don't want to get some pesticides, so I'm just going to use things I already have around the house. A metal wash tub, or pakini as we say in Hawaii, some detergent, and a concrete paver. So what I do is I place the paver in the pakini, and I'm going to add some water, and you have to be sure to use soapy water because apparently ants can float on regular water, and there's something about the surface tension of soapy water that makes it hard for them to do that. So I'm going to build a kind of a moat with soapy water around the paver inside the pakini. Okay, the mowing calmed down, so I don't have to yell. What I'm going to do is take this ava plant that isn't doing so well, and it came from property A. I want to bring it to property B to try and nurse it back to health. But we already surveyed property A and found out it had little fire ants. So I want to quarantine the plant before bringing it onto property B. So I'm going to place it inside the pakini onto the paver, and I'm going to put these peanut butter sticks both on top of the plant and at the base on top of the concrete paver that's in here. And that's because I want to make sure that any hitchhikers that might be in the plant get attracted to the stick, whether they come out on the top or on the bottom. And the best practice normally for bait sticks in the yard, they tell me, is to leave it for about an hour. But what I'm going to do, because it's a quarantine, I'm going to leave it in for a couple of days and keep checking on it regularly, because I want to make absolutely sure that there aren't any fire ants before I actually bring the potted plant onto property B. The other thing is the moat actually serves two purposes. It keeps whatever hitchhikers might be in the potted plant in the middle of the pakini, but it also keeps the ants that might be outside the pakini from coming in. So that way, you know, if you find any of them on your bait sticks inside the plant, you know it came from the plant and not from outside. Okay, this plant has been quarantined in our soap water moat for several days now, and not a single fire ant was found. I did see some tiny ants that were kind of darker in color, and they weren't even interested in our peanut butter sticks. So I'm going to remove the plant from quarantine and say that it's safe to bring onto the property. If there were fire ants in the plant, then I would need to spray and treat it with a solution of bug killer to make sure I killed all the ants. Whenever you quarantine something and you find fire ants, you need to make sure you kill all of the ants before bringing it onto your property, because even one surviving colony can infest your whole property. This is kind of a quick and dirty method of just doing one potted plant in a quarantine that's simple to put together. But if you have more plants, or if you have cinders or mulch or soil, you'll need a larger holding area, and probably would need a barrier treatment of some sort around the holding area to make sure no fire ants escape. And again, if you find any fire ants on the material, you need to treat it to kill all of the ants. And treatments can vary depending on the type of material. So I highly suggest you contact the Hawaii Ant Lab and find out the proper method of treatment, and even talk to them a little bit about the best way to quarantine certain materials. And what I would suggest also is fire ants can hitchhike on household materials as well, so at least do a visual check of things that come from somewhere you know is infested with fire ants. Household items, lumber, you know, at least do a visual check, and you find fire ants, you really need to kill all of them before bringing them onto your property. Protecting your home from this invasive species isn't easy, but I hope you'll give it your best shot. You know, lots of people tell me it's just a matter of time before you get a fire ant problem. My response to that is not if I can help it. If and when the first fire ant makes it onto my property, it isn't going to be because I didn't put out the effort to try and stop it. I hope you feel that way too. When it comes to invasive species, protect your aina, be diligent and vigilant. Aloha, ahui ho.
You know, if you could maybe stick one as high as you can get off, I mean, to check. Or just see if your tree trimmer starts yelling while he's up there. I guess would be a good one.
So with ants, they're smarter and more highly evolved than us. They've have these survival strategies that we have to figure out how to deal with.
Those are fire ants, yeah?